It's a whole lot of us, that's my family. Wanna go higher, turn up the tempo, increase the BPM, okay. Increase the BPM. Increase the BPM. Increase the BPM. Increase the BPM.
What's up, guys? This is Chris Morgan with FCA, University of Louisville. Welcome to our weekly podcast, In the Huddle, where we ask current or former athletes and coaches into this space, into this huddle, to talk about their stories, what God has done, what he's doing, and what he will continue to do. We're blessed today to have a good friend, fellow believer, football player, Kalib Perry. Kalib, welcome to our podcast, man.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. I really appreciate it.
Well, man, you're new to this area, but you're not new to the state.
Yeah.
Man, I look forward to people learning more about you and what brings you meaning and hope. But from Great Crossings High School?
Yes, sir.
And is that Scott County?
Yeah, it's right there in Georgetown.
Georgetown area.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that big blue area completely
Yeah,
almost. Very much. Wow.
Yeah. I'm like 15 minutes from Lex, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you got an interesting journey, man. I've loved since you've been on campus. Your name preceded you, and we'll talk more about that later on. But tell us, I want these people to get an opportunity to really know who you are. So tell me what it was like growing up in your household.
Yeah, so I'm actually originally from Rock Hill, South Carolina. You know that, but that's where I grew up. Lived there about 8 years before I moved up to Kentucky because of my dad's job. But faith and like church has always been in the forefront for us since I was a little kid. One of my mom's dad is a pastor at our church that we went to, Ralston Road, and then I had a great uncle who was also another pastor at my dad's parents' church. So we went to both churches, and it was always a thing we did, whether that was, going every Sunday, going on holidays and whatnot. But two, my grandma was a big advocate for our faith with just like the stories she would tell. And it didn't matter what it was always related back to faith, whether it was, my abilities to play sport or, just happened to be a blessing that she got something that, she prayed about. So no matter what it was, like even if it was failure, it was always, thank you, God, for that. So faith's always been a thing for me in my life since I was a little kid, and, something I've always been able to go back to. And, even more today.
So growing up, it was you and tell me, how many siblings?
So I have 3 other siblings. I'm the baby out of 4.
Baby out of 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my oldest sister, Jenna, then my sister, Michaela. She goes by Squirrel is her nickname. And then my brother, Labrice Jr., but we all call him Fats. That's been his nickname. And then me. And my nickname's Buddha.
Okay.
So
interesting.
So I got that nickname because they said it was like a little Buddha doll when I was born. So I just always been a little nickname. And then my parents also said I just never cried as a little baby.
Never cried.
So I was really quiet. Yeah. So I was just kind of easy.
Got the nickname.
Yeah.
Man, well, nicknames once they get and they stick, man, it's hard to maneuver from those. So obviously sports, faith was important. You've shared that. Was sports heavy in your household?
Very.
What was that like?
So yeah, my dad played Division I college football and ran track as well, and then he played he ended up playing in the CFL for the Rough Riders. So football has always been like it's a staple down there in Rock Hill. That's a really big football capital. I've had a lot of other family members and cousins who played football as well, and then all my uncles and them. So football and like sports has been in my family since I was a little kid. It's kind of have a picture of me what my dad took, and it was me as a little baby. I had like blue beanie on and whatnot, and I had a football sitting like right next to me. So it just kind of ironic that's where I'm at now. So
yeah. So was it just football, or were there other sports that kind of just?
Yeah. So well, obviously football when I was really young, but I did football, basketball, baseball, and then I ran track in high school.
Okay.
And middle school, but baseball fizzled out a little bit and just stuck to track because both same season. But football, basketball are definitely the biggest two, and then they got travel basketball, so that bled into everything, and that's just an all year type of. Ordeal.
There's so many times where people will talk about their upbringing. As I've been with FCA for 26 years, you really get close to people's families, and you hear their stories. What's some memorable moments that you love the most about your family?
Really just the time I get to spend with them. We'd always have so the way it was when I grew up was it was my grandparents' house, and it was about 20 acres or like about 10, 20 acres we shared right there. So it was my grandparents' house. Across the field is my mom's parents. And then at the top of the hill, there's like a dirt road, like a U shape that
Mm,
connects all of us. My great grandma lived there. Top left, my my aunt lived there. And then you go over the hill, and we lived on the other side of the hill with our
okay.
house. So we'd always have big cookouts in my grandma's house, and that was definitely like one of my favorite moments. Was always have like a big fish fry, and always getting to see all my cousins and uncles. It's just kind of just grew up as a family type of
That's
ordeal.
good.
Like everybody was together.
That's real good.
Yeah.
And I can see that. I can see that in you, just how you talk about your mom and your dad. You said your dad played football. Where did he play college at?
Why am I tripping? I can't think. Friends of Marion? It's right there in like North Carolina, South Carolina, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he ended up playing pro ball at
Yeah.
CFL. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So when you at what point did you realize, okay, football is God has given me talent at this. I can play at the next level. When did you realize that
Uh,
God gave you that?
well, we kind of always spoke it in existence. That was a big thing for us that, I had always had aspirations of playing professional ball. Football, like I said, has been a staple in my family from my dad all the way down to my brother and me. And just, it was probably when I came up to Kentucky, and you can kind of notice like little kids that are a little bit like, ahead on certain things, but just playing then and then really when I got to like coming out of high school and I was playing varsity as a freshman and realized I was like, okay, like I can play with these guys. And it was never anything like being cocky. I just, I was just playing football, having fun. And then when I went to my sophomore year and I ended up getting like all these messages on my Twitter and whatnot, and then people talking to my coach, I was like, oh shoot, like it was crazy.
Yeah.
Like I've always talked about it, but when they start reaching out like, hey, we are interested in you, we want you to like visit and whatnot, and want you to know about our program. And then I got that first offer from Cincinnati. And it was so ironic because I went to a basketball game for them. They were out of season and the guy was like, man, we want you to be a part of our team. And then my dad like asked the question, he was like, what do you mean by that? And he was like, oh, like I'm offering you. We were like, what?
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, that's when I was like, holy shoot, like,
Yes. That's
it's like what I
real.
say is like you don't want to like show your excitement,
Mm-hmm.
keep your cool. But like I remember going back in the car with my parents and we were like freaking out. Like my mom was like, that's what I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying? Like that's what I'm talking about, boy. Like
That's
this.
good.
But I was like, oh shoot, like this is for real.
Mm.
Like this is just one step closer. And I'm just
Especially for your first, I mean, your first exposure to be Division I
yeah.
college football. And at that time, Cincinnati they were in the top,
Oh yeah, they were
they were in the
balling.
top 10.
They
Yeah.
were balling. They had Desmond Ritter. Had a lot. They had Marcus Freeman as D coordinator. I don't know if he was DC then, but yeah, he recruited me. So I mean, that was huge. And then it was just like offers would start rolling in after that. But like I said, that was just like one step closer. And I was like this is for real. Like
Yeah.
people are like wanting me to come play football, and all I was doing was just being me
Mm.
and just playing a game that I've always known since a little
Well,
kid.
so, I mean, we've already said Scott County, right there in Lexington's backyard. And I guess you get double whammy. Like you go to Tennessee and now you're here. So two of probably Kentucky's
Oh
biggest
yeah.
rivals, Tennessee and Louisville. Uh, talk to us just about going to Tennessee. Like you committed to Tennessee while you were still in high school.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
tell us what that was like when you went to Tennessee.
The commitment part or just like
Just all of it.
the
Yeah.
whole
Just yeah.
process? So they came on a little bit later towards my junior year. I knew that I wanted to commit to a school like like my senior year summer going, or like, I guess, yeah, that senior year summer. So that was when I had a lot more offers. Obviously, junior years when schools can really talk to you. So that was big, just like taking a lot of visits and stuff. Um, but they were a little bit later, and I remember it was Coach Chop is his name, Coach Harbin. Well, Ron Harbin is his real name, but we call him Coach Chop. And he had called and he was like, hey, like, I want you to come up to a camp. I'm interested. And I was like, I don't really know the guy, but he was like, yeah, I'm from Tennessee. I want you to come up to camp. So I was like, all right, cool. And so I came to the camp and just performed. They really liked me a lot. I went up there and talked to Coach Heupel for probably about an hour after the camp. and they had offered me, and that was my first SEC offer. And so, that was, insane. But I didn't even know how big it was for SEC school, and then at the time too, like Tennessee, the history of Tennessee football. I didn't know anything about it, but it's ironic because my dad's friend, um, they were big Tennessee fans, and we've been to games before, like two. So I mean, I didn't know like how big of an ordeal it was for Tennessee and the history of Knoxville and whatnot. So I got offered there, and then it was funny, like not too long after, which we didn't know why Kentucky waited so long. Nothing against Kentucky, I promise, but they ended up offering me after Tennessee came, and I went to a camp down there too. So they're like, because it was a lot of people were like, "Why have you got an offer from Kentucky?" Well, I don't know, but then Tennessee offered me, and it was like, "Okay, we want you to come now." And then they offered me, so I went through that whole process, but really enjoyed it. Took a visit there, so I went to Cincinnati, uh, Purdue, and then I went to Tennessee for my officials. Really enjoyed them. I mean, I've been to Kentucky's quite a bit for like game day visits and whatnot, so I was really familiar. And obviously, like 15 minutes, I've been around the campus. But really enjoyed it. Enjoyed the coaches, trusted them a lot. It's like another family up there. But I still didn't know everything. But I ended up trusting them and talked to Coach Chop and Coach BJ, and felt that it was a good opportunity. And then went out the opportunity to play at SEC ball in the big time football. So I ended up committing there that summer, and then I go through my senior year because that recruiting process that's rough.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Recruiting is it's a lot. It's just like so many coaches talking to you. Like I'd be in practice, then I'd have like 5 missed phone calls or something. I'm like, goodness, and I was like almost ready for it to be over. So when I committed, it was just like, a little like brush off my shoulders. So I committed there. Ended up going. So the day after graduation in May, I ended up going straight to Tennessee. So reported there, straight to workouts. And it was actually ironic. So through the summer, they have like the soccer games, like preseason games. So I heard about FCA with Hunter Salmon and Jacob Warren. They both were tight ends, but they knew like I was big in my favorite as soon as I came on campus. And I was like, cool. Like, talking about FCA. And I've been a corporate FCA since high school and late middle school. And so he was like, you need to come like to this thing called 110. I was like, okay, cool. He's like, the guy's Chris Walker. I was like, all right, cool. I like heard a little bit about him. So I show up and I like really enjoyed it. But they ended up going to a soccer game. My friend like Ben Bolton was like, hey, we should go to soccer game. I was like, cool. So I go there, and it ends up like the leadership group within the FCA is at the soccer game. So I'm like, oh, cool. Like these are all my friends. I hop in the photo, but I didn't know it was just the leadership group. So I take a picture of everybody. And it was funny because that next semester is when Chris added me to the leadership team. And he was like, who's Buddy? Like, what is he doing in this group? Like, I had never seen him before. But they're like, he kind of fits in though. So that's when I like FCA got introduced to me, and then Tennessee was still new to me. So it was just like clicked from there on. So I just made like new friends, new family, like had a faith group that loved me. And I was like, this is awesome.
That's so good. I mean, because I know the Chris that you're referring to, Chris Walker that has been on staff with FCA for at least 10, 12 years. And, he played at Tennessee. I love Chris Walker. So for you to be involved with FCA and 110 there and just the fellowship that it brought, you had a few years at Tennessee where you grew athletically, but you also grew spiritually. You were involved in part of a family and a fellowship that a lot of athletes get an opportunity to find in their time at college. So, with the whole transfer portal thing happening, God was stirring upon your heart that your time with Tennessee was done, and now you start a recruiting process all over again.
Yeah.
And so that's welcome to college football in this decade. And so, now you're looking for places. What goes through an athlete's mind? Because a lot of people that's watching this may not know. When you transfer, that doesn't mean that you really hate the school. It's just another opportunity for something to go on, and you leave Tennessee in good standing, great rapport. What do you look for? What does an athlete look for when they go to a transfer portal?
Well, to be honest, it was hard. I mean, there's like, obviously a big part of it, NIL is always a huge thing now. that wasn't my motivation with leaving Tennessee. I know that can just be said, but a lot of people could leave for money purposes, or it could just be, opportunity too. That's always the biggest thing you hear is opportunity and just another platform to be able to be seen a little bit more. Maybe they came from a smaller school. In my case, I came from a big school, but just looking for opportunity, just hoping to step into that next level and be seen a little bit more. But that being said, that was really scary because all I've known was Tennessee for the past 3 years of my life. And I was really comfortable there. That was another home for me, another family. I was scared of losing my friends and, like I said, my family and what I've had. But at the same time, I've talked to a bunch of them, and it's not necessarily losing them or saying goodbye. It's just, I'll always see you around.
Mhm.
I'll always come back and see them, and they're my friends at the end of the day. They'll be there for me. So a lot of people were really, you know, they were sad, but they understood and they wanted what was best for me as well. So big thing was just opportunity. So just like coming in, I was just like, okay, opportunity, one more year at this, not no COVID year, not a redshirt year. I'll be a true senior. So it's one more year of this. Kind
Yeah.
of scary to think about, but I got one more year to do this right and, hopefully maybe next level and or just make the best of the situation.
Mm.
So that was my mindset going into it.
Yeah. Well, so, and a lot of times with my role on campus, that a lot of coaches, whether that's lacrosse, field hockey, baseball, even football, I've worked primarily with football. However, I work with all the sports. So when a recruit says to a coach, "Hey, faith is important to me," myself or one of our staff are normally going to talk to the recruit and the family, only to talk to them. Hey, this is what God is doing on our campus. He's at
Mhm.
work at every campus, but this is specifically what we're doing. I found it amazing and yet encouraging that when Coach Ivy reached out and said, "Hey, you may be getting a call from Caleb Perry," just be ready. He's a good guy, great athlete, but faith is extremely important to him. And, when he called me on that, I think it was a Sunday. It may have been a Sunday. I can't remember. I just got out of surgery. I was still in a sling.
Yeah, it was a weekend. I know that because it was during that snowstorm.
Yeah.
So I actually had an interview after a practice, and they were talking about how I kind of predicted it. So I knew Coach Brom. He recruited me at Purdue, and then obviously he was here at Louisville. And I was like, I wonder if he'll ever call me as soon as he hears me go to the portal, and I see a 502 number, and I'm like, okay, And I said I spoke into fruition. But just as much as I talked about, like, opportunity, yeah, faith was really important because just as much as I could be comfortable with, like, the school and whatnot, if, like, I don't feel like I can have a faith circle there, that was a big factor because, like, I'm stepping out of this big faith, my circle. It's like I need to find other people, like, another group, like, to hold me accountable even when I fall short. So, yeah, I talked to Coach Ivy, really enjoyed it, and I don't know if the snowstorm was a, "Hey, like, God, like, you're supposed to be here," type of ordeal, like,
Yeah.
because obviously the airports were closed down, so I couldn't go nowhere else, but I don't know if that was, like, God trying to be like, "Hey, you need to be here." We, like, joked about it. But, yeah, no, I heard about the FCA, and Coach Ivy was like, "It's really big." I was like, "Okay, cool," and then he sent me the pictures of the group. I was like, "Holy crap, like, this is insane."
Mm.
Like, I love a big group and everything, but I was like, "Alright," but just as much as a big group is important, I wanted to meet the chaplain.
Yeah.
So that's when you were talking about, hey, you might be getting a phone call because he texted you and he just told me you got a surgery. So I was like, oh, dang. And you weren't at the facility. But I was like, I want to talk to him. And I was like, FaceTime him. I want to see your face. So it was big for me to meet you face to face because I like to put a name to face. I can
Mm.
hear all about you all I want, but like, judgment of character is going to be when I talk to you.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, hey, I want to talk to Chris. And
Mm.
it's ironic that your name's Chris and then I came from Chris
Chris
Walker.
Walker.
So
Yeah. Well, man,
yeah.
I remember that. I remember taking that call, fresh out of surgery, but not only just seeing, it was intriguing that you even want to FaceTime, which that's good. I love hearing that. Just makes it very personal. But it wasn't just you; it was your mom, it was your dad.
hmm
Got a chance to do that with all of you, and then we hang up, and I immediately send a text to Chris Walker and like, "Hey, Caleb Perry is, he's interested in Louisville. Can you tell me a little bit about him?" And man, just hearing the things that he had to say, that's what I mean by saying that your name preceded you. So then you ended up committing. You're here, and you're a vital part of FCA. What God's doing here, And so there where I say that the transfer portal can take a bad rap, but there's also an opportunity for the transfer portal to do something that's really um, biblical in ways. Is that if God's called you somewhere else, yeah, you can go but leave things on good terms. You left Tennessee on good terms. You're planted here, but what you learned at Tennessee, you're bringing here.
Mm-hmm.
And if an athlete from any sport gets in the transfer portal and goes elsewhere, my encouragement is, hey, you've been raised up. Now you can go to that campus with the same God that was here at University of Louisville. So that's the positive things that the transfer portal brought us you. Yeah, you haven't played a game yet, but you've been established here on this campus just because of what you've done, practice, but also from an FCA standpoint. Tell people about FCA. Tell people, kind of like what goes on in the FCA, and for a college athlete, why is that important to you?
FCA to me is like I said, I've joined it kind of late middle school. I remember it was during track season they talked about it, and obviously I've been a part of youth groups during like my other church and whatnot. But I didn't really. So I got baptized when I was 12. My papa, my mom's dad, and like I knew what baptism was, and my mom was like, "This is not just something you do just to do." But at the same time, like looking back at it, it might have just been something I did, to be honest. Because I didn't understand the whole like relationship aspect of it. But like joining the FCA, like I learned, I was like, okay, there's people who are in similar shoes as I am, but they're experiencing all these things and hurt, and positivity and like growth. But then they talk about this relationship part with God. And that was something I've kind of learned through FCA as I went through along my career and just as being a person too, was like the relationship aspect. And I mean, I've seen God work in my life a lot with things, and maybe I didn't realize when I was younger, but I was like, wow, like, God's always been there for me, whether I realized it or not, and then him doing certain things, I'm like, okay, what is he trying to teach me now? I'm like, well, I didn't realize it then, but really it was a blessing, so FCA getting into college, some people might, there's never like an end goal for being a Christian, or a follower of Christ, but you get to, you're always learning something new. Like you think you know something, then God's like, boom. And you're like, oh shoot,
That's
like
right.
you got me. Like I got you. Like I'm listening, God. You got all my attention. So that was even more apparent. I see people, highest level athletes at these schools and see them struggling with things and them just being vulnerable and just upfront and honest and just talk about the things they struggle with. And I'm like, dang, like I feel you. Like I'm struggling with that too. And that was something I really enjoyed was you get to share experiences with people that are in similar shoes. And you're like, I understand that and I can help you on that because this is what God's taught me. Or even I'm like, okay, this is what I don't understand and I can learn something from you. So the FCA has been something really good that's helped me stay grounded, because it's so easy. Like you have a lot of success. I mean, and you get a lot of praise at these schools. Like you're the front and face of the school being an
Mhm.
athlete, but FCA helps you stay grounded with a lot of things. And even people just help me just like disciple me and help me continue to grow and not get complacent on where I'm at. And I mean, they've been there for me when I've struggled and cried,
Mhm.
when I'm not having success, and they've been there for me even when I'm having success. And I can only just like lean that back towards who they are because they've brought that for me.
That's so good. You talk about a relationship with Christ. Um, that may be foreign to some people that are listening. They've grown up of a religion. Like the check of a box. So to be a senior in college and to have a relationship with Christ, what does that look like on a daily basis for you?
I would say just a big thing for me has just been spending a lot of time with God. So and when I say like a relationship, is understanding that God is not something I just go to whenever I need something. It's not transactional.
Mm.
He's something that I go to just to speak, just spend time with. Understand that I'm not a perfect human. I'm a sinner. I'm nothing without him. I find my value through him. Like I don't find my value just through items and stuff that I have here on earth or my relationships or money purposes, but God shows me a love that's unconditional and continues to be a faithful God to me no matter what it is, even if I do something that I know well aware that I shouldn't have, he always has my back. And he's gonna make me understand, and it's gonna suck, and I'm gonna, I'm gonna learn from what I did. But regardless, he's always there for me and always provides a way.
Mm.
And it's kind of hard to explain a relationship, but like if you think of like someone who means the world to you, God is like, yeah, it's like infinitely better than that. And it's
Mm.
kind of weird to explain that, but he continues to be faithful and prove himself to me every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think any relationship thrives on communication. Like, what kind of relationship would I have with Tammy, my wife, if we never talked?
Mm-hmm.
That we just kind of coexist. It's kind of like she has her spot and I have my spot, and we never connect. And I've always viewed just God's word as God's love letter
Yeah.
to us. That I always want to see how much Tammy loves me.
Mm-hmm.
But the same way that I can open up my Bible and see how God loves me. Obviously you've been given an incredible gift to play a sport. I've said before that um, sports make a great game, but they make a terrible God. And that it's easy for you or for myself or any athlete that grows up playing a sport. It can really quickly be your identity.
Mm-hmm.
That you get a lot of affirmation and applause, and now with the whole NIL, you get paid
Mm-hmm.
to do this. So how does one struggle with the tension of playing? I guess what I'm asking is, like, to being a Christian athlete and to keep grounded where your sport doesn't become your identity.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you maneuver through that?
I believe, I tell a lot of people that it's hard because in college, your sport's year round. It's not just, oh yeah, it's season time, but you got off season workouts, and then you got some type of, say it's spring ball or whatever, or, preseason games, fall ball, whatever it is, fall camps. It's just like all year around. So it's really easy to just like fall into the identity of just like, this is what I do. People see me just for a football player or soccer player or whatever it is, softball, basketball. Yeah, a lot of people see you just for that. But can you ask the question one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just about your identity. How do you maneuver through going, like,
Yeah.
you compete at the highest level, that it's easy for football to be your God,
Mhm.
football to be your identity? How do you war against that?
Really, just talking to you
Mm.
and talking to people that disciple me, that I look up to as spiritual leaders. Understanding that, because it's easy to find a lot of value when you're having success, but then like, just as much as like fans can be your fans, they can also be your worst enemies.
Yeah.
So stuff goes wrong, and then these people that you thought were supporting you, like praising you in a way, or like, dang, like, kind of against you. It's like
Mm.
a lot of people feel like they lose their value from that. So I found value from people who have been in my faith group to show like, man, like that's really tough, and I'm sorry you're feeling that way. But they remind me, they're like, God sees you for who you are and who you are from your heart.
Mm.
Like your football, your sport doesn't define you as a person. And it's been something I've had to remind not only to people, but to myself at the end of the day. Because just as much as I can point a finger to somebody and try to tell them that, I also got to point a thumb at myself, remind myself that daily. And like I said, it's something we do 24/7. But when you finally get that feeling of understanding that, like, your sport doesn't define you, it doesn't give you value all the time. Like, it's not something that just gives you value, but like God does. It's like the biggest breath of like relief ever. And then you just like find another love. It's like you stop worrying so much about trying to be perfect or like trying to do everything right with your sport, but you try to find ways that you can just do right with God
Mm.
and do right with other people. And then that just feeds into your sport too. And it just makes everything like, you fall short, you're still here, like personally on your life and your faith.
Yeah.
So,
And it's not,
yeah.
yeah, we're using football right now, but that's in every profession.
Mm-hmm.
That could be that I don't let FCA define me.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't let, or there's somebody else, a teaching position, or a bank executive, or a principal, or an attorney. It's easy for us to get our identity wrapped up in what we do instead of
Yeah.
who we are. The Bible
Mhm.
says that we're a child of God. that when we believe in Christ, that we become children of His. And I've got 3 daughters, man, that my daughters are, I love
Amazing
them.
daughters, by the way.
No, I love
Love
them,
them. They're
man.
awesome.
And my daughters love you, man, especially Britton, man. That's your tops in her eyes, man. Um, but they're my kids, so I love them not for what occupation they'll do, but I love them because they're mine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy for an athlete or anybody to get caught up in my stats or my playing time or my NIL evaluation or this or that. And
Yeah.
it's like you start playing the battle of comparison, and it's like, no, man, I'm a child of God. So that's an amazing thing in itself. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Well, tell us, as far as like my relationship with God, sometimes as I'm reading, like right now I'm reading through First Samuel, and I've read through that book before, but it's telling me something now and showing me something now that maybe it didn't the first time. And so tell me what you're reading, or what some things that's sticking out to you, or what some things that God's just pressing upon your heart.
Yeah. I mean, obviously in FCA, we've been going through Genesis, and that's been really good because a lot of people think of Genesis, they're like, okay, this is the beginning. This is how everything came about. There's no way this really relates. A lot of people go to the New Testament, like, this relates more to my life, which, yeah, it speaks a lot of truth, but there's also a lot of times in the Old Testament, you look back, you're like, wow, I would have, looking back at it now and things I've went through, I'm like, okay, I can see, like, God's been doing this since day one.
Mm-hmm.
He's been intentional about everything, whether that's from a man, like making man to making women, like making the earth, like why he did it the way he did. And you're like, dang, it's something, it's so weird. So the Bible to me and just God's word is something like sometimes I won't understand, but then I experience something or I see it happen around me. And I'm like, because a lot of people, I was thinking about this when we were talking just not too long ago, like, sometimes, like, people think, like, speaking to God or hearing God's voice is, like, necessarily, like, a big bellowing voice that's like, "Caleb, like, don't do this," and I'm like,
Yeah.
sometimes it's the case for people, but, like, for me, like, a lot of times I see God speak through his actions, and so when I'm, like, feeding myself and feeding my spirit the right things, such as the Bible or just, like, life-giving people, and I read something, I might not understand then, and then I'm like, I'll see it happen, I'm like, "Oh, like, this makes sense."
Mm.
And then I go back and then I'll read it again. I'm like, Lord, that like makes a lot of sense now. And I get an understanding. Or even it's just like talking to you. Like I go in your office almost all the time and I'm just like, hey, like I got questions.
Mm.
Just about like life, like things that I'm struggling with right now. And you always give me some type of peace. He's just not gonna ever admit it. But this man speaks the truth. Like speaks a lot of life and it's just always got some type of answer that's like, okay, I got it. But a big part of that was Proverbs. I love Proverbs. A lot of wisdom in that. And I know Southeast has been going through, they went through and they were talking about, just like wisdom and what's the smart thing to do, like thinking twice before you go. And it was like faith, like faith without works. And it mentions that because we were just reading through James and it was talking about how faith without works is dead. And then it mentions that in Proverbs. So I'm like, I see this like talking back. I'm like, that's like the connections stuff are so crazy. So it's just like something that you shouldn't like be ashamed of, like, oh, I might not understand it, but if you like take a second to sit back and really think about it or like see what's going on around you, you might have an understanding or like realize that you're like, dang,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah, and he connects the dots
very.
for you. Yeah, and to me, you mentioned those office visits, man. It's to me, it's when God interrupts my steps.
Mhm.
And I can be OCD. I probably got every initial known to man, okay? But I can be OCD where I got my schedule planned out and I've got this going on. But it's those God-sized moments where you think, okay, this is where you think you're gonna do, and it's unexpected. It's not even in my calendar that somebody will just stop by and like, thank you, God. Thank you for like rearranging things where I can have God-sized conversations with people one at a time. It's not the big group. I love my Monday night. Monday night's a big group, but I love the smaller the small. I love Monday night, but I also love the one on one or
Oh yeah.
the handful of guys where you can you can really start bouncing things off of one another.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can hide in a big group, you can't hide in a smaller group,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's very beneficial to have that. You haven't been on campus long, but tell me some of the relationships. Obviously, you mentioned us, but some of the other people on campus that your peers. You know, it's one thing for myself or Aaron Nance or Colin Lyman or some of the FCA staff, but give some flowers to some of the other people. You know, athletes, peers that kind of speak into you that have a good
Yeah,
bearing on things.
I definitely will. So the first dinner I came here, that's before winter workouts, I met Hayden Travelstead. And I sat up and he was sitting by I was early, but he was sitting by himself. So I was like, I'm gonna go sit with him and meet somebody. That was the first guy I met on the team. And so I sit with him and I'm like, hey, like, what's up? My name's Kalib, but it's transferred in. He's like talking to me. And I see him wearing the FCA sweatshirt. And I'm like, you go to FCA? I was like, I heard a lot about it. And he's like, yeah, you got to be there. And so like he's one of my like first friends I met. Um, and he's just been someone that I've been able to sit down with and talk. He's a great dude, super funny, always loves to mess with me, but he just is a great dude. He has a great heart, and he's always at FCA, always encouraging me. You might not notice, but every Monday night I'm sitting there and talking, and he'll nudge me whenever you ask a question. He's like, "Hey, like say something." I'm like, I don't know," and then he's like, "You should," and then I'm like, we just mess with each other about that, and then I like won't say it, and then someone was like, you'll answer it, and they'll be like almost similar to what I was gonna say. I'm like, dang, I should have. So now I just answer, even if I'm wrong. I'm speaking something, and maybe someone else had a similar answer.
Mm.
So, Drew Covington's been another great person. I love Drew. I know he's been going through his own personal struggles and battles right now, but someone who just has a big heart for the Lord and just a big heart for people.
Yeah.
Uh,
The thing I love about FCA too is it's just not football.
Yeah.
You got field hockey and lacrosse
Oh,
and
yeah.
softball and baseball and all of these sports that
Oh,
come
yeah.
together. Not to saying that if you're not an athlete you couldn't come, because you're a non-athlete would be welcome to come to FCA,
Mm-hmm.
but there's such a large group of athletes
Oh,
there.
yeah. And you want to talk about another face for FCA? Kamayu.
Oh yeah.
Kamayu is awesome. I remember when one of my first meetings I had with the leadership group within FCA, we were talking, and there's not many boys in there. I know Patrick really well, but he wasn't there that day. And he goes, "Hey, Caleb, come up here." And I go sit with him and George, and we're just like chopping it up, talking.
Mm.
And I'm like, I've never met this dude before, and he's just like, already like we've been friends for 10 years.
Mm.
George, like really just everybody in FCA is really cool. Like you go up to anybody, like I'll see people wearing FCA sweatshirts around school. I'm like, oh, you go to FCA? I'm like, did you hear that testimony? I'm like, yeah, that was good, wasn't it? And they're like, yeah. I mean, everyone's just welcoming. And then, that's just like a spark for other people. They might hear FCA and be like, what is FCA? Or, you might just start talking about faith. I'm like, what church you go to? I met a lot of people in my apartment building that go to Southeast, and I've had opportunities to meet people at church. It's just, like a big family. Like you just never know what's going to happen. Like God's always at the outside the door, like waiting just to creep in. Like it's just like infectious.
Yeah. Last question, man. What do you think? Like, if you could go back, I mean, you're still young. I mean, you're now. How old are you now?
21.
What if you could go back to like an 18-year-old? Let's just say you fresh on the campus, and this could speak to anybody. You could just fresh into your job, your first day on the job. What would you say to your younger self, knowing what you know now? What would you say then?
I mean, that's a hard question because I have like two answers. One would just be don't change anything that you're doing. Just be yourself. I never feel like I had to waver or be different, but I wouldn't be the person I am today without the mistakes I made. I wouldn't know what I don't like. I wouldn't know anything I know unless I made that mistake or things that I didn't know, like that I did. And also just don't be fearful to feel that you don't know something that someone else doesn't. I mean, it's so easy to compare yourself to other people and other athletes and what they have. And even in FCA, like I have people who are like scholars in the Bible that just can recall scripture like left and right. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know what this term means, and I get scared to ask a question because I don't want to seem, dumb or like I don't spend time. But that doesn't define me. And I've learned from that just so there's a lot of power in the unknown. because there's probably a lot of other people who have that same question. So now I just ask questions. I'm not ashamed to do so,
Yeah.
because that's the only way I'm going to learn. And then sometimes there's things I know that others don't. I mean, I love just to walk with people and talk to them about that. I mean, because I was in their same shoes on one day, and I'm still learning a lot. I still don't know a lot. So that would be my answer to that.
Good way of answering that. Well, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Love you a lot. And I mean it. Just that I think it's great to have a guy that excels on the football field, but also he's not timid when it comes to sharing his faith. And that doesn't mean that you're perfect. You're just like all of us. That you have struggles and you have insecurities and you have doubts. And when those start to fester up, you're very quick to go and say, "Hey man, could you pray for me on that?" And that's a trait. You're coachable. And I can see why you excel at the level, because you want to learn and you want to get better. But I'm super proud of you, of who you are and the man of God that you are, and you continue to be. But I appreciate you coming out on the podcast.
No, I appreciate you. And I know you've been asking me a lot of questions, but like I said, I'm going to make sure I give you your flowers. I love talking about people and giving them their flowers. But Chris has been someone who's welcomed me since day one, even before I even got to meet him face to face. I remember the first FCA I came to, we sat and talked for like an hour and a half after you just getting to learn my story of who I am. But he's someone that, he'll talk about his faults and when he falls short of thing. And that he's not a perfect human either. And he's learned a lot through his life about his faith walk and even when he stepped away before. But no, Chris, I really do appreciate you and just the honesty that you bring and just the passion that you have for the Lord, not only to me, but to so many other people. And you always just being so like on fire, just about the Lord, and you admitting even when you're struggling about things like, this is what I've learned from it. I need y'all right now to help me be accountable, and admitting that you're not even perfect too, because it's easy when people see us in that position to be like, hey, like, he's the FCA leader. He must be like a really good dude, like perfect. But we're not. We're human. We do the same thing y'all do. So I appreciate you for that, because you've been a great disciple to me, and I'm very thankful and blessed that God's put you in my life.
That means the world. It's a lot easier saying it than it is receiving it. So man, thanks for you saying that, man. It means a lot.
Oh yeah, no problem.